Hey guys, so we're going to talk about databases now and what they're composed of. We're going to discuss tables, columns, records, and database data essentially. So let's get to it. So what is a database? Well, a database is a place where you can store organized data. Databases are amazing because you can store any type of data from car databases to medical records in an organized way on a computer. So let me explain what the database internals are. Let's pretend we have a medical database, and in this medical database we have appointments, patients, staff, and users. Well, a database holds what's known as tables. A table is basically a subcategory in a database where you can store data. So for example, a medical database that's called medical database, for example, would have an appointments table which will hold all the appointments of the users of the medical database. It would hold a patients table which holds patients relating to this medical institution, a staff table for staff members, and finally a users table where people can log into the application that's using this database, right? So the database holds tables, and those tables hold data. That's the best way to think of it. So for example, let's imagine a car dealership database. In a car dealership database, you'll have a cars table that holds which cars you have for sale. You might have a orders table that holds orders that people have made in the past. You might even have a table for that holds invoices, like holds information about invoices. So the database is basically the cocoon, if you will, and inside is everything that matters. So inside the database is the tables where the actual data lies. Okay. So let's go into the patients table. What do we have? We have what is known as columns. Columns of a table describe certain types of data. For example, a patient ID and a patient name, a patient address, and a patient telephone. So the patients table has 4 columns, and the 4 columns in the database is the information we are storing about the patients. So in this case, because the patients table has 4 columns, patient ID, name, address, telephone, that is the information that we are storing in the patients table. So let's take a look at this. Columns have types. So an integer is a number. Integer basically means number, right? So the patient ID can be a number and only a number. And in the patient name, we have a varchar of 100 characters. So a varchar just means that we can hold 100 characters. If you type 100 keys if you press 100 keys on your computer, that is how many characters we can store in the patient name. So the patient name can't be longer than 100 characters. That's what the varchar data type's for. So then here, the patient address, we have a varchar of 300. So this means we can only hold up to 300 characters for the patient address. Anything that exceeds this will be capped. So if you exceed 300 characters, it'll only store 300 characters that you typed, everything that you inserted. Everything else will be capped. And then finally, the patient telephone has a size of 14 to hold a telephone number. So then as we go into the table, so we just looked at the columns of the table, right? And how they were organized, that like the types of the columns, what the columns are expecting. So if we look at the actual data of the table, we can see patient ID is just a number. If you tried to put letters in there, the database wouldn't let you, because we assigned only the patient ID as an integer. So it only accepts numbers. You can see the patient name is the name of the patient. The patient telephone number is the telephone of the patient, and the patient address is the address of the patient. Now in a real database, you would obviously have a first name column, surname column, and you structure it a lot better, but this is broken down just to show you guys how this works. So that is the database internals.